We've got to stop trying to plan our life. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 55 verse 8, God actually tells us, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine." Verse 9, "For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts." God is thinking on a different level than we can ever think. He is planning on a different level than we could ever plan, and we can either live amazing lives or average lives. The best we can do is average. The best he can do is amazing. I want to take you to the story of Abram, who becomes Abraham. In Genesis, we're going to start in Genesis, let's see, chapter 12, 13. And here's essentially the story of Abram. He gets called kind of out of the blue by God. I mean, he's just one of three sons. One of his brothers dies, and God kind of picks him, right? I mean, he has no idea what's going to happen. They're just a small little tribe of people. And God makes these promises over and over to him. And he says, "I'm going to make you the father of essentially millions and millions of people. And I'm going to give you this land which currently does not belong to you, and currently this massive nation has, and you're just this little tiny tribe of like probably 40 people." And God promises him essentially the world, and Abraham just kind of blindly follows him. But Abram sees, who becomes Abraham, sees God be faithful over and over. And we can see, because Abram builds these altars to God. Every place that God takes him, Abram stops. And it takes a lot of effort to build altars back then, all right? These big rocks. And he worships God. He probably sets aside an entire day. He might have set aside an entire week to worship God, because he knows that's who he's relying on. It's encouraging to us, though, in chapter 12, starting in verse 10 through the end of the chapter, that even Abram has moments where he lapsed in his faith, and he tries to make his own plans. What happens is they go into Egypt, and he realizes that he knows that his wife is very beautiful. And he says, if the Pharaoh, if the rulers of this land see that you're so beautiful, then they'll probably have me killed so that they can have you. So he says, say to them instead that you're my sister. So that's Abram's plan. That's his best effort at protecting himself and his family instead of relying on God. So Pharaoh does see that she's beautiful. He takes her into his house. He gives Abram many, many gifts because he thinks Abram is her brother. And then God sends plagues. It's down in verse 17 that God sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and accused him sharply. Now, isn't this interesting that Pharaoh, who does not believe in God, is being used by God to rebuke Abram? Has that ever happened in your life? He says, "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now, here's your wife. Take her and get out." And Abram takes all the stuff that Pharaoh's given him. He leaves, he gets his wife. And then we come to the story where Abram and Lot have been blessed so greatly by God, they can't share the same land. And Abram has learned to trust God, so he can say to Lot, you take the first pick of land. And Lot takes the better land, and Abram takes the leftover. But God says, see this land? I'm going to give it all to you, and I'm going to bless your people. I'm going to multiply your descendants. And Lot ends up choosing the land that ends up getting destroyed. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram learns that he cannot plan what he cannot see. And that's what I want to talk to you guys. That's what I just want to kind of end on here. You can't plan what you can't see. 5 years ago, I started my own business from home. And the first couple of years, I worked at it very anxiously. I lost sleep at night. It was our main source of income, so I had to grow it fast, I felt. But God had clearly called us to it. Now, isn't it interesting that God clearly called me to something? I took the time to listen. I said no to other offers that were coming from companies that would guarantee a certain level of salary. And I stepped out of faith into something of high risk, something that had to be built up from scratch. And so I listened to God at that point. I stepped into faith to follow him. But as soon as I was then committed into it, as soon as Peter was on the water, right? As soon as Peter's on the water, as soon as I stepped into it, then I said I had to trust in myself. If it's meant to be, it's up to me, is how I thought, is how I felt, is how I acted, and is how I slept at night or didn't sleep at night. With so much anxiety, with so much pressure to make the plan work, to essentially work out the calling that God had placed on my life, then I felt that I had to make it happen. This doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? God calls us, and then after we take that first step of following him, then we say, okay, God, now I'm ready to go where you called me to go, so I guess I better get to work to build this house. I guess I better get to work to make this work. And I don't know why all of a sudden we put the responsibility of the calling on ourselves when he is the one who called. And the Bible says, he who has called you is faithful to do it. And Abram has to learn, just like I had to learn, just like you have to learn if you want to live out the calling God has on your life, if you want to live out the plan God has on your life, that when he calls, then he's faithful to do. But he's not able to do if after he calls you follow him, but then start trying to do it yourself. That's not how the house gets built. That's not how the career gets built. That's not how the life gets built. That's not how the ministry gets built. It gets built by doing this. God, you called me, and I heard you because I was listening. I stepped in this direction because I was listening. And so therefore, my posture every day, my one responsibility every day, guys, your one responsibility every day is just this. To listen. Every morning I wake up and say, God, what's your plan for my life? God, what's your plan for today? God, where do you want to lead me today? What door do you want to open? What door do you want to close? I am anxious for nothing. I worry for nothing. I do not think to myself, how am I going to get better today? How am I going to achieve that thing today? How am I going to get closer to the thing you called me to? Because I recognize that I cannot do it. Once you finally lay it down and say, I cannot do it, I'm going to stop trying to do it, then you allow space for God to step into the calling that he placed on your life and deliver what he promised. Who made the promises to Abram? Did Abram say, all right, God, you called me to be the father of many nations. I better get to work. I'm going to have to destroy those nations. I'm going to have 100 wives so I can have enough kids. And let me work out the multiplication tables to make sure that I have a massive group of people because that's what you promised. No, he said, God, you promised it. You're going to deliver. I just need to listen and go where you say go. That's what I want to encourage you to do today. Who is making your plans? If you're making your plans, you're going to live an average life. That's the best you can do. If God is making your plans every day, you're going to live an amazing life because he cannot do any less. If you want to live out the calling God has on your life, then just like you did when you were first called, which is listen to his voice, what you should do every morning when you wake up is say, God, you're faithful. You're going to make it happen. I have no doubt. I can't make it happen. So I'm just going to be in the posture of listening this morning and throughout the day, and every single step will be determined by you. And even when it looks like we're not getting closer to the answer, to the promise, probably how Abram felt many times, especially when God, by the way, called him to take his one son, Isaac, and sacrifice him to God. Hello, we know that story. Then Abram's there's got to be temptation to think, God, am I really hearing you? Or God, is this really going to take us where you promised us we will go? We've got to trust the voice that called us in the first place. we certainly cannot trust our own. We don't know. We can't see. Only he can lead us to the promise.